Yeah, we're amongst friends. So I'm gonna project. I hope that I hope this is a good volume. If I need to speak up or something, just let me know. Maybe put a ear signal. I want to start off by just thanking you all for being here and just acknowledging a little bit about what this is about. So we're here at the Harvey Milk Park. As you all know, Harvey Milk was an activist. I'm a progressive. I'm a democratic socialist. I like to say that I come from a legacy of activism. That we wouldn't have the rights we have in this world that we have today if it weren't for the people who stood up for their rights in many generations before us. I like to believe that we are passing on an intergenerational torch, a torch that burns for justice. So I want to read to you all just a quick Facebook post that I wrote the other day. I have a long speech, and I'm not going to read that because I don't like people reading speeches at me, which makes me think that next time I'll just do bullet points. So that said, I want to talk a little bit about what our vision is. People hear this term democratic socialism or progressivism, and I think a lot of people are a little confused as to what these terms mean or what our end goal is. Something we need to ask of capitalism as well. What is their end goal? I think it's the end of us. But in our vision, society is concerned about what type of world we leave behind for future generations. Society is geared around the needs of the children. And because we are concerned about their needs, of course we take care of the earth. Of course we eradicate ridiculous prejudices like racism, sexism, and other abysmal isms that have no place in a world built for a better society, built around the needs of the children. In our world, we age gracefully and with honor, and we honor the elders, expecting the same when our time comes. In our world, the journey from womb to tomb is an experience of mutual appreciation for one another, the earth, and all the richness it provides. Folks, I just want to say that there's nothing imaginary, nothing fictional about this world. They like to tell us that it's impossible. The people who spew this nonsense want you to believe that we cannot create this world. And I want to tell you here today with absolute certainty that not only is this world possible, but it's necessary. We have to build a world based around the needs of our children. We have to build a world where we age gracefully. We have to build a world where we take care of the planet and each other. This is not an option. This is not a maybe. This is a must. This world that they have built for us, this world of theirs, is on a path of self-destruction, and it will lead to a certain doom. This is a scientific fact. We must offer the world a much better future, a future to believe in. And that's what democratic socialism is about to me. That's what progressivism is about. For folks who don't know, my name is Elliots Gonzalez. I'm running for Long Beach City Council here in the 1st District. I'm running on a platform calling for a Green New Deal, which includes a shift to 100% renewable energy and divestment from oil. This is probably one of the most important financial decisions that a society can make, is to divest itself from the fossil fuel companies, which are literally destroying the planet, destroying the air, polluting the water, will leave us with no future to leave behind for future generations. We must make this divestment as a moral divestment. And we must invest the same resources that we somehow found to extract resources from under the ground. We must make that same investment to investing into above ground sources of energy, renewable energy, the sun and the wind. I'm not the first person to talk about this. This is an idea Jimmy Carter talked about. This is an idea Barack Obama talked about. This is an idea George W. Bush said we have to get off of our dependence on oil. He was talking about foreign oil, trying to improve domestic, but either way, we have to get off of this stuff. Now, folks like to ask me, Elliot, that's great. I care about all this stuff. I care about the environment and clean air and stuff like that. I think most people do. The question that we always are asked, well, how are you going to pay for it all? Folks, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I'll tell you exactly how we're going to pay for it. We're gonna do what they use, what they do, the energy industry uses. We're gonna use a bank. We're gonna use a public bank, and this bank is going to be backed by the public. I believe that we need to stop banking with Wells Fargo, with Citigroup, with Chase Bank. What they have shown us is that they will leave us high and dry, that they will essentially remove a lot of the wealth from the economy, from the working class, and take that money, whatever money we earned, and bet against us. We end up fighting them on energy projects. We need a public bank that is owned by the public, with the public's interest best, with the public's best interest in mind. That's a big part of why we're running. So when people ask what we're running on a Green New Deal. We're running on a public bank. Also, I understand that a lot of people are concerned about global warming, and they're concerned about these major banks and how they're ripping us off and taking money at the ATM and taking money out of your checking, taking money for you to have access to just access your own money. But most people, when I talk to people here in Long Beach in the 1st District, number one issue isn't global warming or banking or any of the progressive agenda, it's housing. Conservative, Republican, moderate, whatever your economic situation, your political persuasion, we are in a housing crisis. This is a sign of an unhealthy economy. We were in a housing crisis 10 years ago. That was a warning sign that something wasn't right. This is a warning sign that something isn't right now. We must build public and affordable housing. Again, Elliot, where are you going to get the money from? Folks, let me tell you, if you go around downtown Long Beach, I've lived in this community for 12 years now. If you go around downtown in the 1st District, you'll see tons of new buildings. So we built housing. It hasn't been public housing, and it hasn't been affordable housing. So for those of us who are looking for something that we can afford, we have built housing, just not for you. We built housing for other people, people who may not even live here. In fact, a lot of these buildings that have been built over the past 10 years still aren't fully occupied. So meanwhile, we are in a housing crisis, yet we have been building housing consistently over the past 10 years. Downtown Long Beach looks totally different than it did 10 years ago because of all this new development. The problem is this development was not built for the people of this city. We need to build housing for the people of the city. I don't know why we are building housing for other people who don't even live here yet. The idea was essentially a trickle-down economics theory, that if you build housing for people of higher income, they will move here and increase the tax base, and then you'll have some good jobs, and you'll get to work in the service industry and perhaps serve one of these people. Folks, we need economic theories that are based on the uplift of society, not bringing in somebody else, not bringing in some type of economic savior. We are our economic savior. So when we talk about a public bank, we're talking about building the economic resiliency of our community. I want to talk about the environment, but I essentially everything I talk about is going to come down to the banks. Because our last housing crisis, it was the banks. I bet our current housing crisis, it'll probably be the banks who you come down to. Our oil and our gas and our coal and our dying planet in these next 10 years, which are absolutely essential. Next 10 years, scientists all over the world absolutely confirm we must reduce our emissions by 50%, or else you are leaving a planet that will be unhealthy, uninhabitable for future generations. We will be at each other's throats, fighting each other over water, fighting each other over energy resources. It will look a world very similar to the one we have now, where we have unfettered war, continually bombing, continually exploiting people on another part of the country, sending our young people to go fight and die and inflict hell on another group of people we know nothing about. This is the future that is ahead of us if we do not act immediately to address climate change. Not to mention water scarcity, not to mention food scarcity, not to mention higher temperatures, not to mention the effect on biodiversity, 60% of which is now at risk of becoming extinct. So I like to talk about the banks a lot, because as we look to address these global issues, climate change, housing, poverty, they're the folks with the money. And a lot of the issues in our society come down to who has the money and who doesn't. When you talk about politics, half of the time you're talking about money. So we need to have some money. I am tired of looking at this as something we're gonna ask for the people who have some money to be so generous as to write us a check, and from the kindness of their hearts, hopefully we'll save the planet. Hopefully we'll build adequate housing. Hopefully we'll leave some sort of future that is meaningful for next generations. Folks, that's not gonna work. We need to finance our own endeavors. Us progressives, us democratic socialists, we have an agenda, and it requires capital. It calls for building a whole lot of jobs, creating jobs, building infrastructure, building housing, investing in energy, and none of that is free. And the type of work that we believe in, we don't sell our workers cheap. This is all unionized work. This is all work that pays a living wage, a sustainable wage, and none of that is cheap. So we need a bank. We need a bank to finance all of this. I want to talk about the environment, I can't wait, but we have to talk about banking first. We have to talk about the exploitation that is happening to us, the working class, because we won't be able to address some of our common issues if we're all scrapping by, barely making ends meet. Which, if you're in this housing crisis, you understand what I mean when I say scrapping by, barely making ends meet. What a public bank does, a public bank offers the opportunity for residents and governments to invest their money in trustworthy institutions of savings and loan. Right now, if you go to the market, that's not available. So let's say you're a low-income worker. Okay, I'm a low-income worker. Myself personally, I actually am. I have no shame in that. I do take pride in the work that I do. Yeah, and folks, just so you know, I wash dishes. I like to acknowledge the people who do the base work of the economy, the work that keeps us all fed, the people who grow the food that we eat. So I believe in a society that uplifts and values all labor, especially the most essential. But let's just say you're a low-income worker. You know, you do your job, you get your paycheck. Maybe you don't have a bank account. Maybe Wells Fargo doesn't want to bank with you because you're too poor. So you go to the check cashing stores, so-called check cashing stores. They're going to take a percentage of your income before you even see that income, and that's if they decide that they want to cash your check. Let's say you're one of the 40% of Americans who can't afford a $400 emergency. Don't be embarrassed if you're in that situation. Again, 40% of us are in this situation. Ever since the banks robbed us last time, the economy hasn't been quite the same. So you're in this 40% of Americans, and your $400 emergency comes up. The car breaks down. Somebody gets sick. Emergency plane ticket to go visit a relative. You need a short-term loan. You go to Wells Fargo. Let's say you have a bank account. You have Chase. You have Citigroup. You ask them, hey, can I borrow $500 for my rent or for my plane ticket? I can't help you out. It doesn't matter that you've had an account with me for the past 10 years. It doesn't matter that I know that you're gainfully employed. It doesn't matter that I show that you're a responsible borrower. I'm not going to help you out even though I have all of this money, your money, and all of these other people's money. So you go to Chase, you go to Citigroup, you go to Wells Fargo, they say no. Only person who's going to offer you a short-term loan, you need $500, $400, is these check cashing stores. And what they're going to do is they are going to charge you exorbitant interest rates, and they are going to keep you in an endless debt cycle. So folks, I just want us to understand what we're allowing when we allow these check cashing stores to do business, and it's not legitimate business, to do business in our community. What we're saying is that it is okay to exploit the most economically vulnerable amongst us, to put them in endless debt peonage, and to prevent them from ever reaching a higher income bracket or getting out of an economic trap. We are allowing agents that are predatory in nature, in their business practice, to prey on the most economically vulnerable amongst us. Folks, if we don't stand up for the most economically vulnerable, when it hits the middle class, it's gonna hit just as hard. And that's for the folks who still are in the middle class. And that is a dying class in this country. We know that you're either going up or you're going down, and most of us are on this race to the bottom. We've been assigned this position. So when we talk about establishing a public bank, what we're talking about is building the economic resiliency in the community. This, first and foremost, is how we are going to build a sustainable economy. You need a trustworthy institution of savings and loan. Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Chase Bank are not trustworthy. They've already been caught in the business of fraudulence. They've already been caught breaking multiple laws. They've already been caught targeting African American, Latino, veterans in our community in the last housing crisis. They've been caught. They've been penalized. Those minor fees that they wrote to the government is nothing on that great fortune that they got off the backs of the workers, taking our homes, taking our savings, taking our retirement, our pensions. So when we talk about establishing a public bank, again, folks, I say this not as, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Doesn't this sound like a good idea? No, I'm telling you, this is something that we must do. If we are serious about economic resiliency, if we are serious about the social uplift of society, if we are serious about preventing the next economic catastrophe that they will plan that will benefit them and leave us high and dry. What do I mean by benefit them? So you guys might remember 10 years ago, the news, nonstop. George W. Bush told you, I'm on my way out. I need you guys to bail the banks out. Democratic President Barack Obama said, yeah, we're going to help bail out the banks. 10 years go by. It seems like there's this crisis. The banks need our help. They are now 4 times larger than they were back then. Back then, they were too big to fail. So despite their fraudulent activity, despite their predatory activity, despite them taking people's homes and savings and wiping out most of the wealth from the economy, they are now 4 times as big as they were then. Folks, we are asking, if we do not stand up and prevent a situation from happening, we are basically asking for trouble if we continue to allow these, I guess you could call them economic hitmen, economic gangsters, to control the economy. They are not leaders unless you call that leadership leading us in the wrong direction. They are leading us on a path to the bottom. So those are the cases for the public bank, and I could go on, but we have a lot of other issues. I told everyone that I would try to wrap this up in under an hour. I also want to leave some time for questions and answers. So I could go on about public banking, but I just want to encourage you all to look up that term, public banking, what that means. I believe that it is time that we build a public bank here in Long Beach. We offer something for our residents, something that is a trustworthy institution of savings and loan. One other thing before I wrap that up. So let's go back to that person, and it could be you, again, no embarrassment, who needs a $500 emergency. With a public bank, if we show that you're a responsible borrower, if we know that you are actually going to pay the bank back, we can offer you that $500 loan at a reasonable amount of interest, low interest, or almost no interest, to help you build your credit. And I don't know anybody else who is offering this opportunity. That maybe low-income borrowers might like to help build their credit to establish themselves towards the middle class. Nobody's really offering that. A public bank, because it is set up by the public for the best interest of the public, actually offers something to the public that is meaningful. So I just want to share that with you, because I know a lot of us may be in that 40% or know someone in that 40%, and I want you to share with them that there is an option for us to build wealth in this country. It starts with the public bank. So I want to talk also about the environment. For those who may not know, I've been involved in the environmental movement for the past 10 years. I'm 32 years old, maybe 12 years. I'm 32 years old. I got started when I was 20. My first project was trying to save a park that was on the main library. This was a public investment that we had made millions of dollars. We're tearing that library down, but I thought that it was worth saving. I had a vision then, and I still have a vision now, for green roofs everywhere I go, where rooftops are obtaining energy and giving it directly to this building, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, reducing our reliance on a grid. It'll also improve vegetation, provide habitat for birds, animals like that. So I got first started over there at the library. I went on to found the Green Long Beach Festival. This was a festival to create awareness about nonprofits and other organizations that are essentially working to save the planet. I also served on the City Sustainability Commission from 2010 to 2018. During that time, I got the opportunity to serve as chair for a brief moment for 2 years. We proposed the most progressive agenda on the Sustainability Commission. We had the first review of oil and gas operations, something that had never been done by our city council, something that perhaps the city council or our elected leaders thought maybe the public might not care about. Why would the public care about the city's oil and gas operations? As long as we keep the parks going, I guess they thought that it was okay to continue our oil operations without asking any questions. Questions like, where does the water come from? Where does the water go once you're done using water to extract oil? So for folks who are unfamiliar, to get oil out of the ground, it takes copious amounts of water, usually fracking or acidizing. All of the good stuff has basically been tapped out. I think folks might have heard of the term peak oil. During the 1970s, they were rationing gas. It's because oil had reached its peak. It's only because of technology that involves the utter degradation of the soil, of the water, of the land, that we're able to extract that last bit of oil. Or maybe they are able to extract that last bit of oil. So on the Sustainability Commission, we did get to have a review of oil and gas. So when I talk about the environment and why I'm running for Long Beach City Council, folks, I want to pick the conversation right where I left off. Except this time I don't want to be on the Sustainability Commission, I want to be on the City Council. And I want to hear the same public comments I heard before, and I want to encourage more public comments. I believe you, as members of the public, have a right to know what our city is doing, what the oil and gas companies are doing, and most importantly, I think that we all collectively need to make a decision as to what we're going to do with the fossil fuel reserve that our city sits on. For folks who don't know, Long Beach sits on the third largest oil field in the contiguous United States. The plan for the oil developers is to extract that oil to the very last drop. Doesn't matter that the climate is changing. Doesn't matter that it causes heart disease, asthma, cancer, low birth weights for nearby children in the refineries where this oil will be refined in Wilmington, in Carson, in San Pedro, in West Long Beach, in North Long Beach. None of that matters to them. Your health impact, the future of life on this planet, they're in this operation for profits. They're a business, they're a corporation. It's nothing personal. They don't have feelings, it's a corporation. I believe that the people of this city need to be involved in a conversation with these oil companies, and collectively we need to decide, are we going to allow them to drill baby drill to the point of exhaustion, disregard the planet, disregard human health, or are we going to stand up for our future? Are we going to stand up for future generations? Are we going to stand up for all of these many people whose lives are affected by pollution currently? And are we going to tell these oil operators, I'm sorry, but you can't have this oil that our city sits on? We're more concerned about our future. Folks, I'm not going to be able to take on oil alone. None of us are. Not me, not Bernie Sanders. None of us are going to be able to take on the oil companies. The only way we can do this is if we do this in coalition and if we do this as a collective. I believe that we need to have a conversation about oil and gas. And I'm running for Long Beach City Council because I have the courage to have a conversation. And whoever runs for this seat, you need to ask them, do they also have the courage to have a conversation? Are they willing to do what the science says we must do? Again, this isn't an ask. The science isn't asking what you want to do. It's not asking what the opinion is of the market. It's not asking how much tax revenue you're getting. The science is telling us we must keep fossil fuels in the ground if we want to leave a healthy planet. I have the courage to say this on the city council. I have the courage to fight for this on the city council. This is my lifelong work. I'm asking you all to join me. When I'm on the city council, I'm asking for you to support me, to help me get elected, but I also need you in the audience that day. I need you speaking up against Marathon Oil, speaking up against Endeavor, against ConocoPhillips. I'll do some questions at the end. I'll do some questions at the end.
No, you and I are both socialists. I'm an anarcho-communist.
Okay, 1 second. I'll do questions at the end. I need us to demonstrate public courage. So part of the reason why I'm running, it's not just about me. In fact, in our movement, we always say it's not me, it's us. We democratic socialists, we progressives, we understand that the only power we have, because a lot of us don't have the money, we don't have the resources, we really don't have much power. We're always begging these people, please protect our air, please call your senator, please vote for our health care. What we are doing, what we're starting to realize is that the only way we get power, instead of begging these senators, is by organizing together. Organizing and building collective power. Again, folks, I tell you, I'm from a legacy of social justice. This is what those who fought for our freedoms showed us before. Nothing will be handed to you. Everything that you want, you will have to fight for. So we're going to have to fight the oil companies. What other fights am I talking about? So besides telling these oil companies that we have to keep fossil fuels in the ground because we have to keep fossil fuels in the ground, there is a church being built. I like to call it a church of death. It's being built by Marathon Refinery, formerly known as Tesoro. We had a march there a couple of years ago, so then they changed the name to Endeavor, and now it was bought by Marathon. So they don't want to be very open about who they are, even acknowledge their name, acknowledge what they're doing. So I'm running for city council because I want to acknowledge who they are. I want to acknowledge what they're doing. What they're doing, this Church of Death, is a refinery. They plan on building the largest refinery in the West Coast. How large is this refinery? It is so large, it's going to go from the city of Carson, where it's at now. You might have seen it on the freeway up to 710. It has an American flag. That refinery is going to expand all the way out here, past into West Long Beach, into Wilmington. Largest refinery in the West Coast. It's going to take in some of that crude back in shale from North Dakota. It's going to take in the tar sands where they're ripping up the forest in Canada, literally skinning the earth to take that last bit of oil out of the sand. It's going to take petroleum pumped here in Long Beach if we don't stop them. And it's going to refine it, and it's going to burn it into the air, and this is why I call it a church of death, because, people might have different opinions about God, Mother Earth, but capitalists, they do have a God, and their God is money. And so they will build for their God an altar, a church of death, and they will sacrifice upon this altar the lungs of the children in the community of Carson, in Wilmington, in North Long Beach, in West Long Beach. They will ensure that asthma rates, which are already pretty bad, already some of the worst in the nation, that this air, which is the worst in the nation, will become even worse. They will increase rates of cancer. They will increase rates of heart disease. They will increase the heavy metals that are in the air, the poisons that are in the air. And folks, a lot of us have these heavy metals in our blood right now. Our bodies have adapted to it. What we do now, it's sort of like taking straws. Not everyone here is going to get sick because you breathe this air, but it is very likely that someone will. So by breathing the air that we have now, our current state, we're all pulling straws, someone's going to get a short straw. What happens when they build this refinery, this church of death, they're just cutting more straws. More people will get cancer. More people will get asthma. And folks, I get really emotional about this stuff because cancer's serious. If you've ever lost anyone to cancer, if you know anyone who's ever fought cancer, maybe they fought it. I'll tell you, it's a very serious ordeal. And to know that we will allow a company to cause cancer is outrageous. So folks might say that our agenda, the progressive agenda, the democratic socialist agenda is extreme. There's nothing extreme about it. What's extreme is allowing a company to cause asthma, to cause climate change, to allow them to put lead, to put mercury, to put heavy metals, nickel, cadmium into the environment. That's extreme. That's outrageous. So folks, if that means that I have to run for city council so that I have a pulpit for us to stop this refinery as a coalition, my name is Elliots Gonzalez, and we are going to stop this refinery. We are going to take on Marathon. That's why I'm running for city council. And folks, again, let me tell you, I'm not going to be able to stop this. Bernie Sanders is not going to be able to stop this. Governor Newsom is not going to be able to stop this. What's going to stop this is a collective coalition effort, working with our partners, working with our community, our neighbors, putting aside our differences and coming together over the commons, our air, our future, our children. I may not have any kids, but when it comes to climate change, when it comes to the world we're going to leave behind, they're all our kids. I'm not the parent of any child, but we are the village. And we have a collective responsibility to these children. All of them precious. All of them deserving clean air. So folks might say, you know, Elliot, wow, that's an ambitious agenda. You want to build a public bank. You want to, tackle climate change and take on the refineries. Yes, it is. Folks, that's what being a progressive means. It means you have courage. It means you don't hold back in terms of your thinking. It means that you are willing to envision a much better world, and you're not limited to the world that they have provided to you. Speaking of the collective imagination, and there's a war on the collective imagination. Right now they tell you you are powerless against climate change. Right now they tell you, well, this affordable housing crisis is already here and it's happening everywhere, so just get rich, and if you don't, well, it's your fault. There is a war on the collective imagination that says, no, we can provide adequate housing for everybody. Oh, we can take on climate change. I want to share with you an idea that is not radical, that is not extreme, that you don't hear very often in the media, in the mainstream, and that is that we could put an end to homelessness. Folks, I don't know about you all, but everywhere I go to Sacramento, San Pedro, San Francisco, Long Beach, San Diego, everywhere throughout California, which this is the wealthiest state and the wealthiest country in the history of the world, I see people sleeping out on the streets. Myself personally, I talk to so many people who know that we're just a paycheck behind our brothers and sisters who unfortunately don't have a place to rest their heads at the end of the night. So, again, going into this collective imagination, into this world of what is possible, I want each and every one of you out here to believe that it is possible and it is necessary for us to end homelessness. That this is not some radical idea, that the money is there. I want to remind us where we were 10 years ago. Wells Fargo, Wachovia, no longer here, now owned by Chase, Citigroup, JP Morgan, all of the banks on Wall Street told us they need a bailout. $700 billion bailout. It takes 31 years to count, starting 1, 2, 3, 31 years to count to the number 1 billion. $700 billion printed on computers, drafted by the Treasury. You'll see a decline in wages. We're going to take it from your pensions. We're going to fire some teachers. We're going to fire some librarians. Americans have to make a sacrifice, cut the police force, cut the fire department. We have to help our brothers and sisters on Wall Street. They need us. Well, let me tell you, you go to California, you go to Long Beach, our brothers and sisters who need housing, they need a bailout. We have to help them. So what are you going to do about homelessness, Elliot? I'm going to tell you something that you won't hear from most politicians. I don't think we need more services. I mean, of course, services are nice. The solution to homelessness is building houses. You got to build homes for people to not be homeless. I don't hear that very often. I often hear that maybe we should work with a nonprofit and they'll get them in a program and they're going to fix them. Folks, there might be a lot of problems for people experiencing homelessness, drug abuse, other forms of setbacks that they might be going through in their life, and they might need some additional assistance, no doubt. But if you're serious about challenging homelessness, you have to build the homes. It is really that simple. So what am I talking about when I talk about addressing homelessness? I'm talking about a jobs program. I'm talking about continuing the work that Martin Luther King talked about. A jobs program, this is not a radical idea. Martin Luther King talked about this 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Had we done this 50 years ago, maybe we wouldn't have the crisis we're in now. And if we don't do something about the crisis we're in now, let me tell you, the next 50 years are going to be a hell of a lot worse. So we have to address this issue. We must guarantee everybody a job. What kind of work? Taking care of the land, building housing, building clean energy, taking care of the earth and each other. So yes, folks, what I'm talking about is a social contract. It says to society that we will focus on the uplift of society. We will invest in our children. We will invest in housing and homelessness and the affordable housing crisis that will leave a lot of us in a very desperate situation if we don't do something about it now. That's our social contract. It is an environmental contract. It says that we will protect life on Earth. We will protect the living creatures. We will protect the biodiversity. And us and our humanity are included in the biodiversity and the living creatures that we will protect. It is an economic contract. This contract says that we will build an economy that works for all of us. We will stop this practice of 50% of all new wealth going to the upper 1%, while all of us are over here scraping by, deciding how much we can tip. Can we afford this tip? Can we afford this ride? What am I going to do about this emergency? Can I pay my employee a living wage? I don't know, because there's not enough money in the economy. This new economic model says, oh, there's more than enough money for us to build businesses that provide living wages, for us to build the housing that we need, for us to take care of our basic needs, to live up to the modern standards of a developed world, of a developed nation. It is an economic contract, it is a social contract, it is an environmental contract, and it is a moral and a spiritual contract. Because morality says that we have to get out of this situation. Morality says this business of seeing people sleeping out on the streets and out in parks and bus stations, this is heartbreaking. I cannot allow this. Morality says that knowing that we will leave a planet that is unsustainable for future generations is unacceptable. This is our humanity calling out to us. I like to say spiritual. Some people may not have views of spirituality. I understand that. You know, you might have your issues with God. Totally been there. I understand that. We're not here to judge. We're not here to preach. Myself personally, I do start my political views on a spiritual practice. I look to the generations of the past, and I honor the four directions. And so when I look to the generations of the past, I know that we have to make things right with the original people of this land. We all know how this land was acquired. We have a responsibility to make sure that the indigenous people are not left behind in this conversation. We have a responsibility to make sure that those people who have been historically left behind and disenfranchised will not be when we make this Green New Deal. I look to generations of the future, and I know that we all have a responsibility to these generations to fight for them. As somebody who got to go to what they call an integrated school, back when this country practiced a nasty business of separating people by their races, I wouldn't have had those freedoms if people didn't fight for our abilities to have the world that we have now. So we look to the generations of the future and we tell them that we will fight for you. I look to the direction of the south, to our Mother Earth, who's in great peril. And folks, I'm not magic. All of us can listen to the Mother Earth. All of us are born onto this earth as a natural living being with a connection to nature. And what I hear from the earth is that someone needs to fight for her, and that is us. I look to God, and I believe in God, and I understand if maybe you have issues with God, but I believe in God. And I ask God for the spiritual resiliency, for the guidance, for the strength to help us endure. Because back when we had an anti-war movement, back when we had a civil rights movement, back when we were in major struggles as a nation, there was a spiritual practice. So I believe that what we are making is a spiritual contract with the four directions, with generations of the past, with generations of the future, with Mother Earth and with God. And what we are making in this contract is that we will set things right with our humanity, with a moral compass that is inside of all of us. So with this economic, with this moral, with this environmental, with this social contract that we make as democratic socialists, as progressives, I invite you to join us, because we're not going to be able to do this alone. Join the democratic socialist movement. Join the progressive movement. Join the movement fighting for affordable housing and a sustainable environment. Also join this campaign. Sometimes we talk about the broader issues. I also got to remember I am running for Long Beach City Council. So we have a sign-up sheet. I just want to ask you to join the campaign. Consider donating to the campaign if you can. Consider hosting a fundraiser if you can, a friend raiser if you can. How we're going to fund this campaigns is going to be different than the way that campaigns are typically run. So for most politicians, if you run for office, this is what you do. You find the wealthiest people you know, you assess them based on your perception of how much money they're bringing in, and you ask your wealthy friends, hey, can you get some of your wealthy friends and have an event for me, and I'm going to ask for donations, $500, $1,200, maximum donation between you and your spouse. Folks, that's not how we're going to do this. We're going to do this through small donations. We're going to do this through community activism, through community organizing. I want us to fundraise and organize for our issues, organize for organizations that will endorse me, and we'll get all the support that we need. I've never had money. I'm from the working class. I'm from the working poor. Money is not my biggest concern when it comes to this campaign. My biggest concern is, did we raise the political consciousness enough? Are people enough in touch with their moral compass? Are people ready to fight back against the oil industry, against the banks? Are they ready to fight for our humanity and our future? That is what I'm going to judge this campaign on, not how much money I made. The money will be there. The money will be there. I've always believed that. I'm not going to let something as like a lack of funds be an impediment to this campaign. So I want to ask for your support in any way that you can, whatever way that you can, to support this, to support me for Long Beach City Council. I would love that, but also to join this movement, because it is a political movement, it is a moral movement, it is an environmental movement. So with that said, I know I've been talking a lot, and folks, let me tell you, I can go on. I had a plan A for a microphone. This is my plan B. That didn't go too well either. So I'm going to save a little bit of my voice, and I want to hear from you. Do any of you have any questions about how we're going to accomplish this agenda? Any members of the press?
What's your plan for public parking?
I'm glad you mentioned that, public parking.
Right there.
So folks, let me tell you what the plan is now. The plan is to increase the fees. Let's try that. What happened?
You're saying their plan now, not your plan?
Yeah, their plan is to increase the fees, continue to target low-income neighborhoods that are disproportionately affected by lack of parking. Essentially, those neighborhoods come down to, and I live in a neighborhood like this, it's musical chairs. Somebody's going to be left out at the end of the night, especially on street sweeping day. Someone's going to get a ticket. This is predatory. We must end this practice of being predatory on our residents. So the plan for parking is we're going to stop the doubling of parking fees in case someone doesn't pay their fee within 30 days. Whoever wrote that fee has never been in a check-to-check, paycheck-to-paycheck situation. Whoever wrote that fee doesn't know what it's like to have to decide between groceries and the light bill. They don't understand the pain that some people are going through in these low-income communities. That they can't afford a parking ticket, they barely had enough to put the gas in it. So we must stop the doubling of these parking fees. We must look into forgiveness programs. I know that's not something we talk about too often in society. Forgiveness. It's a ancient practice found in almost every religion. It's a very healing practice. But that we can forgive people of their debts, in case they incurred a parking ticket, if they request assistance. I don't think that that's asking too much. I think asking too much is asking people to come up with $150 that they don't have when they have other more important bills, including groceries, people to feed at the house. Because when you charge people $150 because they couldn't pay their ticket in time, maybe they didn't have the money, so now they owe you more money, you're taking away people's groceries, you're taking away from families. So our parking plan will be to stop preying on people, ending these predatory practices.
What about the shootings and the homicides?
The shootings and the homicide. I'm glad you're talking about that. So one, crime has been on a decrease nationwide and as well as in the city of Long Beach. But these past couple of months would have told you different because we've had a lot of violence, an uptick in violence. Here are ways that we address shootings and homicide. Number one, Bernie Sanders talked about this on his campaign, and when he talked about it, I always had this very sinking feeling in my heart. A recent tragedy happened right here in Long Beach. We have people who are not getting the mental health treatment that they need, who have absolutely nothing to lose, who are suicidal and may become homicidal. This recently happened. There was recently a homicide. Somebody took one of those electric scooters and brutally beat to death a resident of our city. This is incredibly tragic. This is what happens when you don't invest in mental health. This is what happens when you still have the same policies from the Ronald Reagan era, back when he was governor. I think this was when he was governor. We stopped funding mental health facilities to get people the housing that they need, the mental health that they need. So now there are people on the streets who are willing to go through extreme and violent practices because they have nothing left to lose. Because a medical doctor was not able to evaluate them. Because they didn't get the medical treatment that they need, violence can happen. So one of the ways that we treat violence is through mental health support. One of the ways that we treat violence is through eradicating poverty. Again, bold idea. Elliot, how can you eradicate poverty? I'm not going to eradicate poverty. Bernie Sanders is not going to eradicate poverty. As a collective, when we make a moral decision as a society, we can eradicate poverty. When you eradicate poverty, when you reduce poverty, you reduce violence. That is a statistical fact. Countries that have high rates of violence tend to also have low rates of income. That's just the way that it works. So I believe that a lot of the uptick in violence can be prevented when you don't have people in scarcity. When people don't have a need to rob or kill or beat each other over a lack of something. I'm not saying that, of course, we're going to eradicate all violence and that's the source of all violence. Of course not. But I'm saying that the violence that is caused by lack, the violence that is caused by a lack of mental health treatment, medical health treatment, that violence can be reduced and prevented.
What about the gangs and the lack of cops?
The gangs?
And the lack of cops.
the gangs and the lack of cops. Okay. In terms of this lack of policing, I'm not sure that there really is so much of a lack of policing. Because when I look at our budgets year after year, and I work with organizations that look at our city budget, we're always increasing the police budget. Not only that, we have a police training academy here in Long Beach. That was one of Robert Garcia's priorities. So
40%.
we shouldn't be, how much is it?
40%.
40%.
47, I think.
40, 50%, 47.
Almost 50%.
And I'm sure there's a 3% that's unaccounted for, 50%. 50% of our budget is going to police. So we cannot do more than half of our budget on policing. We need to find other ways to reduce crimes. How about we try uplifting the lives of people? Maybe people will have less reasons to beg, steal, to be violent, to do whatever they do to increase the crimes if their society is stable. I'm not saying that crimes don't occur in wealthy areas, but they occur a lot less when it comes to petty crimes, when it comes to somebody going into a store and taking something. That situation is less likely to occur when people have the income. Steve?
Elliot, I'm going to ask you, your environmental goals are magnificent. I'll ask you a practical question, and I'm going to kick her off. Which of your environmental goals do you think you can realistically accomplish in your first 4-year term, assuming you're elected and consider running for re-election? I'm going to challenge you. I go speak at city council. I'm giving you a 3-minute limit. Tell us in 3 minutes or less what you think you can accomplish.
3 minutes or less, and you guys have been here a while, so I'll keep it less than that. So if I get elected to city council, for those who didn't hear the question, what will I do within 4 years? Number one, 2 years ago, I started Stop Fracking Long Beach, and when I did that, I made a promise to this city. Whether you vote or not, whatever your situation is, everyone in the city, I made a promise that we can put a ban on fracking. There is absolutely no reason why we should take acids, mix it with water, which is in limited supply, especially on a continually warming planet, especially here in the West, and extract that last bit of oil. So I will fulfill my promise within that 4-year term to put the ban on fracking. But as you know, that's not enough. Putting a ban on fracking is not enough to address climate change. Stopping something is not building something. So the most important thing that we're going to do is solarize Long Beach. We need to take all this energy, which is on us now, which is on this roof, on this parking lot, and put it into our grid. And so we need a local solar program. The other thing, this is something that's not just me, this is something that the city is already doing. So I'm not going to be like most politicians to take credit for something that somebody else started. But the city is starting a community choice. This is being led by the Long Beach Energy Department, formerly known as the Oil and Gas Department, in preparation for the transition from fossil fuel. So we're going to move to a community choice alternative, a community choice energy program. For those who are unfamiliar with what that means, basically Edison will no longer procure our energy. We will take our own energy, we will develop our own energy, and with that we can make a commitment to developing only 100% renewable energy. So that is one of our commitments within the first 4 years. Any other questions?
Will there be a tax base on it?
A tax base on
Developing our own energy, like solar panels?
if we are to put a tax, well, first of all, that will take a study. If we were to put a tax on energy, the tax would be on the polluters. In the environmental movement, we have a saying, and that is polluter pays. Because what ends up happening is the public pays. Plastics. Who has to pay to clean up plastics? The city of Long Beach. When there's trash, let this fire department know. Thank you guys for your work. Appreciate you. When there's trash, when there's straws, when there's cigarette butts, when we have to clean up the beaches, we have to pay for that. We spend millions of dollars cleaning up the beaches with these expensive equipment. We need to go from a position where the public pays for pollution to where the polluter pays for their pollution. So when we need to solarize our city, the polluter needs to pay for that. And that's the oil and gas company. And the best thing about it is they have the money. Unlike us, They're filthy rich. Jeffrey,
Yeah, what do you think about the Green New Deal?
the Green New, did I not mention the word
You
Green
haven't
New Deal?
mentioned that.
Oh my gosh. Folks, thank you, Jeffrey. Folks, so I didn't actually mention this, and this is what happens when you don't read from your speech. The whole speech is called the Green New Deal. I say it 100 times. Yeah, what we're talking about is a Green New Deal. And what I think about the Green New Deal is, yes, this is going to be a federal program, hopefully under a Sanders administration, where we will invest massively, rapidly into transitioning our economy, just like we did with the last New Deal. And unlike the last New Deal, this time nobody will be left behind. But with the Green New Deal, I want to take it a little bit further than a federal level. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and Pelosi and all of them, what we're making, let me just be honest, is a contract to the world. And what we tell the world is that we, as the city of Long Beach, will do our part as a player in the international community to address climate change. We are making a contract with the world that if we all join together, cities around the world at a local level, in India, in China, in Africa, in Europe, everywhere, Australia, everywhere around the world, we're solarizing our city. We're investing in our community. This is the Green New Deal. It is a social and economic, a moral contract that we can make at a local level to our entire planet and to future generations. What I'm campaigning on is a Green New Deal, and I'm encouraging other communities to fight for a Green New Deal, to develop their Green New Deal locally. When that money becomes available under a federal program, I want us to be shovel ready. So you might remember back when the banks robbed us 10 years ago, there were a lot of shovel-ready projects for cities to reinvest in infrastructure. This is an infrastructure project. The Green New Deal is investing in a renewable infrastructure, in a renewable economy. So we need to earmark and cite these specific projects that we need for Long Beach specifically. And that's exactly what I'm campaigning on. Any other questions? Any friends in the media? Thank you, LB Report. Anybody else in the media? Okay, I appreciate Forrest for coming out here. And if anyone knows anyone at the Press Telegram, at the Long Beach Post, at these more well-respected institutional newspapers, I want you to tell them that they need to cover a political candidate when they run for office at a public park at a decent time. They have a responsibility to print the news to us, to report the news to us. I appreciate Ford for reporting what happened in the 6th District towards Councilwoman Lena Gonzalez. I appreciate LB Report for their investigative journalism over the many years, though I don't always agree with Bill Pearl on the issues. One thing that we do agree on is that journalism has a standard and it has a responsibility. And that responsibility is to the public, to inform the public. So, please go tell our friends in the other media that they should have been here today. And I hope that they will stay involved in this conversation. I think that climate change, housing, and all of the banking, all of these other issues that we're talking about are very important. And I wish that they spent a little time reporting on these issues as well. So with that, unless anyone has any further questions, I want to just say thank you all for being out here today, bearing with the sun, bearing with the long speech. I appreciate it. Appreciate all of you.